He is a founder of the Financial Psychology Institute and a managing principal of Your Mental Wealth Advisors. Brad Klontz was awarded the Innovative Practice Presidential Citation from the American Psychological Association for his application of psychological interventions to help people with money and wealth issues. Brad has been a columnist for the Journal of Financial Planning, on Wall Street, and PsychologyToday.com, and has co-authored 5 books on the psychology of money. His work has been featured on ABC News 2020, Good Morning America, USA Today, Money Magazine, NPR, and many other media outlets. Meet the leaders shaping the new era of credit. This is the VantageScore podcast. Today, we talk to Brad Klontz, award-winning financial therapist and advisor.
What date do you start asking questions like, would you ever want to have a family someday? Or what do you want to do for a career? And have you thought about where you'd like to live eventually? I mean, about the time you start having those conversations, whatever date that is, it's a huge mistake. People never have the conversation around money. What happens is it becomes a big, big problem later on. And one of the reasons we don't talk about it is because we're worried about it. We have shame around it. But I think it's a really appropriate time to ask, like, hey, so what are your financial goals? Like, what are you wanting? How important is retirement to you? Like, how would you envision your work life? And having some of those really basic things. And then, of course, as a psychologist, I'd like you to take it to another level and sort of ask them what it was like for them growing up around money. How did they feel about their socioeconomic status? You know, what are their goals? What did their mom teach them? What did their dad teach them around money? For me, that's pure gold, because essentially we're coming to the relationship with 2 different money mindsets. And if we don't really understand ours or our partners, we're just setting ourselves up for conflict. So this is really unromantic, what I'm about to say. But a successful relationship is essentially a series of successful negotiations. And that sounds terribly unromantic. And I'm ashamed to even say it out loud, but that's actually how it is. So essentially, we need to be able to negotiate and find solutions, because it's a shock if people are on the same page around money. I think what's more typical is that people aren't on the same page around money because you didn't grow up in exactly the same family. You didn't have exactly the same experiences. Even if you came at a similar socioeconomic status, people might be handling money and talking about it very, very differently in your home versus your partner's home. And so I think it's really normal to not be on the same page. So essentially, I think it's a great idea. And I love the concept of a spending plan where you and your partner sit down and you think about, like, what are your top 5 financial goals? And they might differ. And you might need to negotiate a little bit. Like, your partner might have vacation on there and that's not one of yours. But it's trying to meet in the middle so that you can work as a unit towards achieving those goals. A difference in income is actually pretty common. And sometimes throughout the course of a relationship, based on family situation or whatever, one person might decide to work a little bit less. The other one might decide to work a little bit more. So, like, the chances that you're going to have equal income your entire relationship is very, very slim to nothing. So you're going to have a disparity in income. And couples handle that in many, many different ways. And I've seen it work in every different way. It's just you need to be on the same page with it and okay with it. What's so interesting is that also think about how the government looks at your relationship. So if you're married in many states, you know, the income that's coming into your life in that given year, quite often the state is looking at that as 50-50. So that would be the financial reality. And how you guys want to look at it within your relationship, that's up to you. But that's kind of the reality. Like, the assets you're bringing into when you're that joint economic unit tends to be seen as joint property, or it's 50-50 kind of split in the worst case scenario. And so sometimes couples will look at putting a certain percentage of their money towards the house versus a dollar amount. And I've seen that actually work and be somewhat empowering for people who are feeling bad about making less. So I have not seen a pattern around doing it one way or the other and being able to say that people are happier doing it this way. But what I have seen is people miserable, whether they're doing it separate or together, if that's not really what they want to do. And so there is no right or wrong answer with this. Joint accounts, separate accounts, a combination. Some couples, for example, will just set a spending limit. So if I'm going to spend more than $200 on something, I'm going to consult with my partner before I pull the trigger on that. Sometimes that feels great. Now you both know, you don't have to worry about what the other person's doing. For some people, that feels like it's too much. Like, it feels paternalistic.
She runs
like,
an industry-leading research
my
team of
wife
economists
before I
and
buy
analysts
something. I
recognized
want
by
more
a wide
independence.
audience
And
of
so
media,
in some
policymakers,
circumstances
and
like that, couples
professionals.
might decide to
In this
put a certain
episode,
amount of money
Dr.
into
Svenja
separate accounts, and then they
Goodell
don't have
shares
to
her
talk to
journey
each
to
other
becoming
about
the
it.
chief
I've seen
economist
it
at
work
Zillow,
in many,
one of
many
the
different
leading
ways, but the
online real
key is
estate
making sure that
marketplace
it feels
companies.
good, making
Find
sure
out
that
how
it fits for
COVID-19
you,
has
because you're going to
impacted the real estate
negotiate a way
market
to
and
do it,
housing
ideally,
predictions.
but then you're going to have to
Everything from
actually
home
sit with
value
it and see if it
gains and
works. And
credit to
so a
challenges the
huge
market
mistake
is
couples make,
facing
I
and tips
think,
for
is
investing in
when
a
they
home.
negotiate something at the start
Meet
and
the
then they get
leaders
really
shaping
upset
the
if
new
their
era
partner
of
wants to
credit.
renegotiate it. That's
This
life.
is
And so you have to
VantageScore
actually kind of
podcast.
build that into the process. And
Today,
so I
we
really
talk
do
to
encourage
Dr.
couples to sit down,
Goodell,
come
Chief
up with that
Economist
agreement,
at
but then
Zillow.
revisit it and just be
This
asking
is part
themselves,
2.
is this working
Even
for me?
entering
Is it
the
working for
pandemic,
you?
we
Is it
saw
working for
a
us? And those
trend
3
where
questions you have to keep
a lot of
asking
home
yourself
builders were
your
building
entire
at the middle to
relationship
high end of
around
the
every
market.
issue. Is this
And
working for me?
that made
Is it
a lot
working
of
for you? Is
sense
it working for
because
us? And so it's that
oftentimes
series
it's
of
not
negotiations
extremely
over time that
profitable to
really
build at the
does
bottom
help
end
you
of the
become a
market. It's
successful
just
and
too
happy couple.
expensive to build a house.
So the whole issue of
oftentimes,
hiding
given
stuff
land
around money
prices and
is
regulatory
really bad.
costs.
Okay. And
And
it's also
so it's
very,
not an
very
easy
common.
feat to build an
So
affordable
I've seen some
home,
anywhere from
or
1 out of 3
not
to
even
1 out of
the
2
common sense of
people
affordable, but a
admit
cheaper
to
home for a
hiding
first-time
or
home buyer.
deceiving their
And so a
partner
lot
in
of
some
builders are
way around
building
money.
middle to
So
high end.
just understanding
And
that this
so
is very, very
even
common.
going into all of
But
this,
it's
it
also
wasn't
a
easy to
problem
find a
because
first-time home.
if all of a sudden your
And now
partner finds
people
out
will certainly
that
have a
you've
harder
been
time
hiding
finding their
something from
first-time
them,
home,
and by
their
the way,
starter home, if you will.
it could be spending,
And
it could
on
be
top of
investment
that, credit has
decisions,
gotten to
it
be
could
much
be
tighter.
borrowing
I think
or
if
receiving
you
monetary
need a
gifts.
plain
It could be
vanilla
giving
mortgage
gifts
and
to other
you've got
people. I mean, there's a
excellent
whole
credit,
host of
you've got your
ways
20%
that
down
people
payment, you're
can
good.
interact with
You
money
can
and
take
sort of hide
advantage
it from
of
their partner.
unbelievably
But the
low
problem
rates
is
right now, and they are
when that
unbelievably
comes to
low.
light,
But if you don't
your
have
partner
the
might be
20%
on the
down
other side of that
payments,
going, wow,
or
so,
if your
if he or
credit
she is
isn't
lying
quite
to me
as
around
long or
this,
established or
what
amazing,
else are they lying to
you're
me
having a
about?
really hard
So
time
it
getting
leaves a
even
sense of
a
paranoia
mortgage, let
and a
alone a low
violation of
rate.
trust.
And so
that's
there
the
are a
big
lot
concern.
of roadblockers,
And so there's
if
a
you
lot of
will,
reasons
trying
why
to
people
make
do it
that
too. And this is the
migration
other thing you
from
have to
being
think
a
about.
renter to a homeowner.
Are you trying to
And
hide
so
spending from your
that's
partner
absolutely
because
a
you have
concern for people
essentially,
that
you're an
wanna
overspender, like
get
you know
into
you
the
have a
market to buy their
problem,
first home.
all the way up to the point
All
of a
markets are
compulsive
really
buying
hot for
disorder,
first-time home
which is a
buyers. And I
full-fledged
think
disorder that needs
even some of the
treatment.
markets
Are you
that
hiding a
we
gambling
saw
tendency or a risk-taking
relax
tendency
or
in
that
stock
weren't
market,
quite as
and
hot
you know
over
that
the
your
last
partner
few
would
years have
disapprove
started to
from
pick
it?
up steam.
Are
And
you
so
hiding it
even
because
if you
your
move into
partner's
the
a
middle of the
bully?
country,
And
the
this, by the way,
coasts
does
have
exist
always
where
been
you
extremely
have
hot.
somebody
They're
who's so
expensive and
anxious
hot,
around
and
money that
most
they don't even
jobs
want you to
are
spend
on the
anything on
coast in
the
terms
most
of,
minimal
the big
thing,
ones
the
that you
most
think of
basic
first when you
necessity.
get out of
So
college.
there's a
And
lot of
so
things that
a
could
lot
be
of
at
job
play there in your
centers are
relationship.
located along the
But I
coast.
do
So
think
the
it's really
housing markets
important
there have always been
to have that
expensive and hot.
honesty
But
and be able to
even
talk
if
about it.
you
And I
go
know that can
middle
be a
of the
challenge.
country,
And so I'm going to
Nashville,
recommend too that
Salt Lake
if you're
City,
struggling
even
around
parts of
money and
Chicago,
fighting about
that
things
traditionally
repeatedly, what
perhaps
happens is you have a
aren't
tendency to
the
get
the number one
entrenched and
markets to
further
think
out.
of when it
And you
comes to,
actually have a tendency to become
Nashville
ridiculous
are
in
starting
your
to
own
pick up
stance. Like
steam in terms
if your
of how
partner's
much
spending a lot of
homes
money, all of
are
a sudden you can be
and
like,
how
no,
hard
you
it is
spend
to
nothing.
actually
And it's like,
get an
that's a little
offer
bit crazy,
accepted
right?
in
But
some
you're
of these
trying to
homes as a
compensate for your
first-time home
partner.
buyer.
And we
And,
can all get a little bit nuts when
Texas
we're
is
trying to
a
do that and
cheaper
trying to
market,
convince
but
the other
their
person that they're
Austin
wrong,
is
et
extremely
cetera.
expensive to
So
buy
my
a
number
home. And
one
so,
tip is like, if you keep
it's
fighting
perhaps
and you
slightly
can't
easier
find a
there than,
resolution,
say, the Bay
go get some
Area,
help.
but not
Go see a
a
couples
cakewalk for
therapist.
sure.
And I know it's a terrible thing. Like
Obviously,
when
your
my
credit
wife
score
tells me we need to go to
determines
couples
quite a
therapy, I
bit
don't want
in
to
terms
go,
of your
you know,
ability
but
to
I
be
do know it's going
approved
to
for a
help.
mortgage.
I do know it's going to help
And
to sit
for
down there
renting
and
as well,
hammer it out.
oftentimes
And
landlords
I think
will
it's
pull
just a
your
great
credit as well. And I
safety
think
thing that you can put in place for your
historically,
relationship.
in
If
credit
you
scores,
guys
you don't
can't come to an agreement
reflect,
on it,
right,
that you already built
have you been
in
making
that you're going to
your
go
rental
seek
payments
some
on time, for
expert
example. And
third-party
so
help.
other
Because
things
the
kind of
average
will
person who
impact
gets into
your
therapy,
credit
the average
score.
couple who goes to
And if you
therapy
don't have a good
has
one
been
right now,
fighting about the same
it's
issue
really
for
hard to get a
7
good mortgage or take
years.
advantage of
Now
really
just
low
think about
mortgage
that.
rates. And
7
the
years
30-year
of
fixed
fighting
mortgage
around the
is
same
under
issue. What a
3%,
terrible thing. All the
historically
resentment that
low.
builds up, all the
And
hurts that
if
come
you
about, go
are
there before 7
slightly
years. Just
more,
please.
quote
Like
unquote,
if you can't
complicated case
resolve
in
it
terms of getting
and
a
you've been at
mortgage,
it for a few
you're
months,
having a
just
very
go
hard
consult
time
with a
accessing
financial
those low
planner
rates. So
or
if you
a
don't have a
couples
20%
therapist
down
and
payment
just
or your
work towards an
credit score
agreement.
isn't
I think it's a good
outstanding,
idea to
you
have
will
that
either get a much
discussion
higher
early in
rate
the
or or you won't
relationship.
be able to get
Because
the
again,
mortgage.
you're not going to be on the same page around
A
certain
lot of
things.
the
And so to be
challenges that we're
checking
seeing
in on
right
it.
now
And then I think
have
ongoing
yet to play out.
conversations
We
are
have to
really
kind of see where
important.
we land
I think
in
it's
some of
important
these
for
things,
many
right?
reasons.
Because we're
So
still
a
in the
lot
middle
of
of a
times one
pandemic.
partner
Something
may
could
not want
still
to deal with
happen,
money at
even though
all,
this
and
year
they might
must
be
just end.
yielding all
But
the responsibility to the other
it's one of those
partner.
things
The
where
other partner might actually like
unemployment
that.
is
They might want to be
fairly
in
high at the
control of
moment.
the money.
Certainly
As a matter
off
of fact,
the
sometimes you
extreme
seek each
lows
other
we
out in
had
those
seen in
circumstances. So if I'm
previous
bad with money,
years now,
I might be really
pre-pandemic.
attracted to
And
a partner
we
who's
were
really
at
good with money
3.5%,
because I'm like,
and now
"Whew,
we're
now I don't
closer
have
to
to worry about
8%.
that."
So
And then a
quite the
partner
uptick.
might be
And that's
really
going to
attracted
leave
to me
quite a bit of
because
scarring
I'm sort
in
of
the
a
market. A
free-loving
lot of
spirit and
people
I know
have
how to
been
enjoy the
affected. They
moment.
are out
And
of
so that's
jobs.
really, really
They aren't
common.
able to make
But the
payments.
problem is if only
So
one
that's going to
person has their
disrupt
hands
that
on the
natural
finances,
evolution
what
from
happens if
renter to
something bad
homeowner if you're
happens
in
and
that
somebody
boat,
gets
or
hurt
even
or
renter
they
to
pass
renter if you
away?
stay
A lot
if you
of
stay on
times
the
we can
rental
be in big
side.
trouble, not
And
knowing the
so
basics around our
unemployment is
financial
a
life.
big one. inventory
I see it
is
happen
going to stay
both
with
ways.
us.
I see
Inventory
some
remains
couples who
incredibly low.
seem to be
We're
right
down
on the same page
30%
around how they're going to
year-over-year,
handle
more than
money.
30%
And then I see
year-over-year in
couples
terms of
who are
overall
on different
inventory.
pages. And I
It's
haven't really
even
seen a
tighter if
pattern
you look
around
at
it
the
because
bottom end of
sometimes
the market.
we're
So if you
attracted to people
split the
like
market
us,
into
like
thirds
one of our
and take
parents.
a
I
look
know
at the
that sounds a little
bottom
creepy,
thirds,
but
more
that's often what
affordable
happens.
starter
It
homes or
feels,
entry-level homes,
comfortable.
there it's
Something
even
familiar
tighter
about
what's
them, that kind of
available.
thing.
So
It's
that's
a
going
real
to stay with
subconscious
us
thing.
as well.
And then sometimes
We
we're
have a
attracted
lot
to
of
people who are wildly
wealth
different because it's really
inequality,
exciting,
a lot of
or
social
it's a sense of
inequality in
security.
housing as
And
well.
so I think it's really
And
common, though,
that's going to
overall,
disrupt
you're not
the
going to match
markets.
up on everything.
And on top
I just
of
think
that,
that's
you have
extremely rare.
just uncertainty
I'm a
of
huge
not being
fan
able
of financial
to know
planning and
exactly
the
what the
nuts and
market's
bolts
going to be
and
heading.
making
And
sure
so
you've got a
people's
solid
willingness
financial
to
plan.
perhaps sell
And so I
or
think it's
buy
great
will
to
be
do that
impacted
early.
by some of
So
that
I think
uncertainty
before
as
there's
well.
any trouble,
I don't think we're going to crash.
enlist the help of a
anytime
financial
soon.
planner to come up
We're
with, like, what
still
is your
kind of
strategy?
feeling
Like,
it in our
where do you
bones.
want to
What we
be?
went
Like,
through with the
first of
Great
all, what does
Recession,
retirement mean to you? Does
that's
that
like a
mean that
once
you're
in
going to wait until
a
you're in your
once in a
70s, which is
100
fine?
year
Or
kind
does
of
it mean there's
period
an early
thing.
retirement or a partial
It doesn't
retirement? I
happen
mean,
that
even
often
the
that
question of
housing market
retirement,
just crashes.
two
Certainly not a
totally different things
national
to different
market.
people.
They're
And it can
boom
mean
and bust
multiple different
periods.
things. So
And
what is that
you
goal for you
locally you
if
can
we're going to
see
use
more of
retirement as
a
an example?
cycle
And
in
how much do you
housing.
need to start
But
putting
what we
aside
just
now
went through
to
on a
get there?
national level back
Whether
in
it's saving for a
2008 is
house
fairly
or a
uncommon.
car
So no,
or
the market isn't going
retirement
to
or
crash.
children's
In fact, prices
education,
are very
there could be a whole
sticky.
list of goals.
So
But having a
if you're
solid
in the
plan, and if you
business of
put it in place
measuring what
really
home
early
values
and
are
you
doing, or
automate,
any prices
so
for
you
that
set
matter,
that
the
number
best prediction
and
of
you
what's going to
automate
happen the
money
next
moving out
month
of your
is what
checking
happened the
account,
last
before you
month,
know it, you're going to
because
reach
they
your
have
goals
quite a bit of
because your
momentum.
income's going to
And
increase
so
and you're not even
you
going to
have to
notice it.
really
The big
see
problem that a lot of us get
very
into
large
is straight out
impact
of
for
school,
the
where
market to
we call it
crash. And
lifestyle
conditions have to
inflation,
be
right? Where you're
that
not
perfect
paying yourself
storm.
first,
And we
and
aren't
then
seeing
your
that. In
life
fact,
seems
housing has
to
been quite
inflate
strong
as your income
amidst
does,
this
and you
economic
can never really
downturn.
seem to get
So
ahead.
I don't
And
believe the
before you
market
know
will
it, you can
crash
be making
anytime soon.
6 figures and not be saving a
Millennials are a
dime because
much
you can't afford to
larger
save a
group
dime
than baby
because you
boomers,
didn't put
and
that
they're
structure in place
the
early. So
oldest
that
ones,
structure being in
38,
place early
39,
is
are probably
incredible.
homeowners.
It's
A large chunk of
powerful.
them already.
And before you know it,
And
you're going to become
there's
wealthy.
a
This is just
bunch
how
of
the
that
math
generation that
works.
hasn't
So
actually
financial
reached
planning as
that
early as
age of
possible.
the first
Now,
time
when
home
might
buyer
you need
quite
to
yet.
see
So you
somebody
still
who
have quite a few
specializes in
millennials moving
financial
through the
therapy or
pipeline,
couples
hitting
therapy?
that point where
It's
a
usually
share of them
when
will decide
you're
to
upset,
become
your
homeowners.
partner's upset,
And
you
then you
keep coming
have
to the table
Generation
trying
Z
to
on their
find an
heels,
agreement, you
also
just
an
can't get there.
incredibly large
And
and
then
total
people
larger
start to get
generation
upset or
that will
hurt
also
or
want
angry.
to buy
And it's that
homes at some
repeated
point. Now they're
trying
still
to
pretty
work it out
young.
and not
The
being able
oldest
to do
ones
it. Or
there
you
just
come up
start
with an
to kind of
agreement and then
age
somebody,
into
quote,
being out
violates
on
the
their own
agreement.
for the first
And
time in
that
a
doesn't feel
rental.
good. It
But
doesn't
they
feel good to
too
be
will at some
the
point
person
reach
who's
that
not sticking
marker
to
of
it,
wanting
as
to
well as the person
possibly
who
buy a
feels
home. And
like
so
they were
a lot of
betrayed.
demographic
And a lot of times that's
tailwinds
a
there for the
couples thing
housing
too.
market.
It's not just one bad
The
person and one good
Latinx
person.
homeownership
There's a
rate has
dynamic
really
at play
saw
there,
some stronger
where maybe
movements
somebody
prior to the
doesn't feel like they
pandemic.
can
Again,
tell their
the
truth
pandemic
without being
itself has had,
judged or
unfortunately,
misunderstood.
unequal
And so
effects
I think
on
when you
different
notice that
groups
the
and
relationship
races
is
out there.
becoming painful
And
related
that's
to
why
it,
it's so
it's a great
important
time to find somebody to
be
help you navigate
mindful
that.
about the inequity
I
in the
love
housing
for
market
couples
for
to
different
start,
races,
regardless of
and
what they're
being able
fighting
to
about.
give access.
I always
And
start
there
couples with that.
certainly
I
a
call it the
bunch of things that you can
conversation,
do
where
to
it's like
supply
that early
more
conversation, like almost
available
putting
housing
yourself back on
units,
that
more
10th or 15th date.
affordable
And do you
housing
remember how
units, so that
curious you were
everyone is
about your
able to kind
partner
of
and how
make that jump
interested
from
you
being
were
a
about
renter to a
everything about
homeowner?
their inner
Because
world, and just try
being
to
a homeowner is
embody
one
that
of the
space
most
and then
important
have a
generating
conversation
factors
with
for
them.
wealth in
Like,
the
what
long
was it
term,
like
right?
for
A
you
lot of
growing up
people,
around money?
their
What did your
largest
mother teach you
asset
about
is their
money? What did
home,
your
and that's
father
how they
teach you about
generate
money?
wealth. And
What was your biggest
over a really
fears?
long
What are your
horizon,
biggest
usually your home
goals?
increases
Just
in
that
value.
really sort of
So it's like your
fun
piggy bank that you
conversation. And
pay
some of
into
it's not
every
fun.
single
Like
month.
if you had some bad
And it's an
experiences in your
incredibly
family around money,
effective mechanism
but
for
that
savings.
goals, like
And
what is it you
that's why
want?
homeownership
Let's talk
oftentimes
about
is so
that,
important. So
and if you
enabling
can
that
really understand
jump
that, what
from
you're going to
being
do is
a
two things.
renter
Number
to a
one,
homeowner
there's a really good
is
chance your
really
partner has
critical,
no idea idea
especially for
because
people
they've
of
never
color.
thought about any of
The
it.
consumption
Because
industry
we don't
in
talk
general
about money.
is a good one to
So
kind of pay
you're going
attention
to
to,
provide them
particularly
the
if you're
opportunity for them
interested
to
in figuring
understand
out,
themselves better.
are people
And
going to
then
move
you're
and buy
also
more
going to get
homes,
to
or are they
understand
going to
them
stay
better.
in their homes and renovate
So
their
for example,
homes?
if
So
you see that your
taking a look
partner
at what's actually being
overspends on
purchased,
something,
how willing
like goes
are
out and
people
buys some
to purchase
clothes and you're like,
things,
I
and
can't believe you're
so
doing that.
consumer spending
If you
in general.
understand that part
And
of their
then among
motivation
those
around that
lines,
is
paying
that they
attention
grew
to what
up
the
in
savings
poverty
rate is and those
and
types of
they
things. So
couldn't have
that's
anything,
important. I do think
and
as
they get
part of our
triggered every
predictions,
now and
we
then
do
because they
pay
get a
attention
paycheck
to
and they're
the
like,
industry
I
as a
don't
whole,
want to live like
because
that. I
housing
don't
is
want to live like
essential
that
to kind
anymore.
of everything
Just
that we do.
understanding
Everyone's
that
going to live
they're
somewhere,
playing out this
and
childhood
it's
thing.
very impacted
First of all,
by the
it
rest
doesn't
of the
mean that you're
economy.
not going to come
So
up with an agreement
if
around it and some
unemployment is
boundaries
high,
around
that
it, which is
changes
really
our
important.
behavior and
But just
our
having some
ability to do
compassion
certain
for,
things, right? And
it's
our
not just that they're
sentiment is impacted,
irresponsible.
and that shows up
That's
in
not what's
consumer
happening.
spending
There's
and
a
a bunch of
deep
other stuff. So
psychology related
all
to it that's
industries
based
will
on
kind of give
early
you some
experiences
sort of
growing
read
up.
on
And if
these
we can
things,
take
but
that into
just
account, then
spending
as a
in
partner,
general,
I can know that about my partner, and I can get actually pretty motivated about having a feel rich fund or whatever I want to call it, where we put some money every month over there so that I know that my partner can feel like he or she can go splurge on something because it helps fill that need for them. So it just shifts the conversation pretty dramatically from you're being irresponsible to, wow, you have this need and I'm going to help you meet it.
FHA loans, or
a lot of our stress around money that comes from a disconnect between our behaviors and our values
associated with it.
And so I think it really does help to sit and really think about what it is we actually do want.
You will have to pay.
So what is it you actually do want out of life? We did a study where we had people get really specific about what they want. So you kind of have to do the math. And we had them create vision boards and cut out pictures and adventure or vacation or I want to get this house, that kind of thing. And just by being really, really clear about what they wanted, and this actually blew us away. They saved 73% more than they were saving. And they did nothing else. And this was after only 1 hour of visualizing what they want. They got so excited about it. I bet you if we had talked to them beforehand too, they'd been like, I can't save any more money than I'm already saving. But they got so pumped up about it. So the stress you're dealing with right now, there's a chance you're not really moving towards this goal and what you really want your money to do for you. So if you can get really clear about that, what we found is it really helps your intrinsic motivation to take action related to that personal situation. Another really important thing, obviously, and this really came to light recently in COVID, qualified and when you're ready to back in the Great Recession, super important. Qualified so you can our stress around money market is so short can actually kill us. You need to understand a whole lot of time to so it is a significant mortality risk factor. But you have to be ready and specifically about stress around money, that you're in akin to heart disease and diabetes. I mean, and smoking. I mean, it is really powerful. So financial stress can kill you. If you're living in the United States, though, chances are your financial reality isn't going to kill you. And you might be experiencing tremendous financial stress, like you lost your job, you lost your house. Like these things happen. They happen to a lot of people. They're gonna always be happening to people. But you got to keep it in perspective. The average millionaire has experienced 3 financial tragedies and catastrophes in their life. So think about that. 3. The average non-millionaire is slightly less than 1, statistically speaking. And so failure is a milestone along the path of success. And so this is the framework and the mindset I encourage people to embody. And then the other part is to decreasing your anxiety. Just do the worst case scenario analysis. And this can be really helpful. It's not very much fun. My wife and I did it during COVID just as an experiment. And it's not very much fun. It's like, so what's the worst thing that can happen? It's like, okay, so I lose my job. Well, then what would happen? Well, then we lose our house. Ouch, that would be terrible. That would be embarrassing. That would be horrible. Then what would you do? Well, quite frankly, we'd probably have to find some family members to move in with or some friends, God forbid. Like what a terrible conversation that would be. And then what would happen? It's like, well, then we'd be able to rebuild. And I got to be honest with you, my kids would probably look back on it as the best year or 2 of their entire life, getting to live with some friends or relatives or whatever.
This podcast is brought to you by VantageScore Solutions, a higher level of confidence. Thanks for listening.
To some of those fears. And at the end of the day, you realize, we survive and we bounce back because that's what people do. And this happens to a lot of people. It happened to a lot of people in 2009. So good thing you didn't let that stress kill you in 2009, because now you're back on your feet and you're really enjoying your life and you're giving your kids everything you need. And so keeping that in perspective, very, very powerful in reducing our anxiety and also giving us a vision of what's possible. The trauma is real. I mean, it really is. And what's interesting about this is, you're really not alone. You're not alone. This has happened to so many people. And I actually feel like there's some benefit to that. Because it's not just because you're crazy, lazy, or stupid, or irresponsible. I mean, nobody could have really planned for this and seen it coming. And of course, it's industry dependent. And whether depends on the type of business you own. This has happened to so many of us. And so really understanding that you're not alone and it's just going to be a process of rebuilding. And I know for each of us, it's going to be different. Like maybe we got into some credit card problems. And so we're going to have to dig ourselves out of that. Maybe we had to downsize our entire life. And it's going to take some time for us to build up some money so that we can get out of whatever that situation is. If you had to move back in with your parents or you lost your job, and just be looking for opportunities to rebuild. So, in those down times when you are down, can you learn a new skill set? Can you start an online business? I mean, what are these things that you didn't have time to do before that you can do now? So always looking for those opportunities. So the mantra I always encourage people to embody is, where's the opportunity? So yes, terrible things are happening. I'm not getting what I want, but where's the opportunity? And if you can ask yourself 10 times a day, where's the opportunity? It's absolutely incredible what you're going to notice. So for example, one of the things that we dealt with is, all of a sudden schools are closed. And that was a miserable experience for us. It put a lot of pressure on us as a household. But I was kind of like, where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity? And so for me as a father, I'm a way better father, frankly, after COVID started than before, because I have more time with my kids and I'm focusing on that more out of necessity too. But where's the opportunity in the midst of the crisis? It's a powerful mantra. So the assessment we've been using in research, and now, like I said, with tens of thousands of people at this point, is called the Klontz Money Script Questionnaire. And if you're interested in taking it, you can just go to moneyscripts.com and take the exact same test we've been using in our research. And what it'll do is it'll give you your set of money scripts. And quite often people come up high in one or two categories, but you can learn about that category. You can learn about the upside, the downside. And the powerful thing about it is you can start to shift some of your beliefs around money, because your beliefs predict your outcomes.
The views and opinions expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of VantageScore Solutions. This podcast is brought to you by VantageScore Solutions, a higher level of confidence. Thanks for listening.